What up, guys? Your boy Quake, and I'm back with a brand new episode on someone who forever changed the music industry. And normally I say artist, but this guy is not an artist, he's a producer. And this is one of the most well-known producers in the world and has been in the music industry for over 30 plus years. And in those 30 plus years, this producer has done a lot of things that has forever shifted hip hop and that has forever shifted the music industry. And as you can tell by the video title, this is Compton's very own Dr. Dre. This is how Dr. Dre forever changed the music industry. Dr. Dre has remained relevant in music in some sort of way over these past 30 years, which is insanely hard to do. Imagine you being relevant and on top in some way in a certain field for over 30 plus years. And this is credited to the way he's reinvented himself and the way he's introduced other artists and put them on. And through putting them on, they've been on top and remained relevant, so that in turn makes Dr. Dre relevant. So let's talk about the things that Dr. Dre has done that has forever changed the music industry. But before I get into that, I want to clarify something. I won't be mentioning the stuff that Dr. Dre has done with NWA because that's more of a group thing. I'm focusing on this video on Dre as more of a solo act. I will be focusing on NWA on a different episode, so I wanted to clarify that before people get in the comments and start mentioning why I didn't mention Dr. Dre in NWA. So now that that's clarified, let's talk about the first thing that Dr. Dre has done that's forever changed the music industry.
That particular record, man, that's like I would say the toughest record that I recorded in my career because, you know, it was right after my separation with Ruthless, and I was in survival mode in the studio during the making. It was crazy, you know. During that process, my house burned down.
Damn.
I was shot in the legs, you know what I mean?
Damn.
And I was in the studio on crutches for a couple of weeks, you know? So it was a lot that went into that record.
The first thing he did that forever changed music was when he released his debut album, The Chronic, on December 15th, 1992. They didn't know it at that time, but when Dr. Dre released this album, it forever changed the way hip-hop sounded at that time. The Chronic introduced the G-Funk genre to the mainstream, and it was mixed very well with gangsta rap and hip-hop, and this sound would be the sound that would define the 90s of hip-hop. And because this album was such a mainstream success, it ended up selling 5.7 million copies just alone in the US, and because of that major success, a lot of people started taking the West Coast hip-hop a lot more serious, and it ended up introducing a lot more West Coast artists. This album alone introduced Snoop Dogg, Daz Dillinger, Corrupt, Nate Dogg, and Warren G. And in today's time, these artists would be considered West Coast legends. On top of that, West Coast was essentially owning the market of hip-hop in the 90s, all thanks to Dr. Dre, because after the release, Snoop Dogg ended up blowing up insanely, and Tupac ended up blowing up insanely. And since West Coast music was becoming so influential at the time, you would see artists from the East Coast start to adapt to their sound, such as artists like Da Brat and Redman. And when The Chronic sold so many records at that time, a lot of people were surprised, and that's why they started following Dr. Dre's sound, because this would be the first time a gangsta rap record would have such a huge impact on the charts. The only hip-hop categorized artists that were selling a lot at that time were Beastie Boys, MC Hammer, and Vanilla Ice, and those weren't gangsta rap like Dr. Dre's album was. And from that success of that album, another thing was sparked, and that was Dr. Dre influencing other artists to finally own their own record labels, because as we know at that time, Dr. Dre was the co-founder of Death Row Records with Suge Knight. So this influenced a lot of other artists to be like, hey, let me get my own record label because look how much success Dr. Dre is having when he's on his own.
You have taken cats and you've turned them into household names.
Well, of course it doesn't
stars.
start. Of course it doesn't start out like that. You know what I mean? It's just what I feel and what I like. And fortunately, you know, I've been able to be in the studio with these guys are genius as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? Snoop, Eminem, Cube, all these guys are genius as far as I'm concerned that have made me look good throughout my career.
The second thing that Dr. Dre has done that's forever changed the music industry is simply launch the careers of a lot of successful rappers. As I mentioned previously, when Dr. Dre branched away from NWA and started his own label with Suge Knight called Death Row Records, he also managed to introduce an insane amount of artists at that time. The most notable one was obviously Snoop Dogg. Dr. Dre played a huge role in Snoop Dogg's debut success and his overall career. When Snoop Dogg dropped Doggy Style, which was heavily produced by Dr. Dre, it ended up debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200, and this was the first time that an artist's first album debuted at #1, and it ended up having first week sales of 806,000 copies, and this was insane first week sales. It was the highest for a debut album at that time. Then Dr. Dre played a huge role in Tupac's mainstream success. When Tupac came to Death Row Records, Dr. Dre had a huge role in the production of Tupac's All Eyes on Me album, and this album was the one that skyrocketed Tupac to mainstream success, especially with the single California Love. Then when Dr. Dre was having issues with Death Row Records and Suge Knight, he ended up leaving and starting his own label, 100% his, called Aftermath Records, and this would be the label that would skyrocket even more careers. As we know, Eminem was the first artist signed to this label, and as we know now, looking back, Eminem is the biggest selling hip-hop artist of all time. So clearly, Dr. Dre had major success once again in launching another rapper's career, and a lot of people consider Eminem a legend, and Snoop Dogg a legend, and of course, Tupac a legend. And of course, it didn't stop there. I know Eminem is credited in 50 Cent's career in introducing 50 Cent to Dr. Dre, but Dr. Dre had a major role in how 50 Cent's music sounded. So he gets part of the credit of 50 Cent's success. And as we know, when 50 Cent came out, he was the biggest thing in hip-hop, had the biggest buzz, and even broke Snoop Dogg's first week sales record, selling 872,000 copies within the first week of Get Rich or Die Tryin'. So basically, Dr. Dre was breaking his own first week sales record of a debut album because Snoop Dogg was obviously his artist and 50 Cent ended up being partially his artist as well. And of course, it didn't stop there. West Coast music was dying out. West Coast needed a new artist for the mid-2000s. And of course, Dr. Dre was working on something and introduced The Game to the world. And of course, The Game blew up. The documentary ended up selling like 500,000 copies within the first week and like 5 million copies worldwide. And as we know now, Dr. Dre is involved with Kendrick Lamar and his label TDE, and he helped launch Kendrick Lamar's debut album, Good Kid, Mad City, which is also considered a classic. And as time goes on, I'm pretty sure Kendrick Lamar would be considered a legend, such as the previous artists that came under Dr. Dre. So looking back, Dr. Dre had a role in Snoop Dogg's career, Tupac's career, Eminem's, 50 Cent's, G-Unit as a label, which I skipped over, The Game, Kendrick Lamar, and various other artists. Some didn't succeed as big as those ones I just mentioned, but they definitely had a role in a lot of successful music, such as Nate Dogg, who was a classic on hooks. People loved him for hooks. And I'm sure in the future, Dr. Dre will get behind a lot more artists that will end up becoming legends. Right now, Anderson .Paak is someone that a lot of people have their eyes on, and he signed under Dr. Dre's Aftermath label.
I was walking down the beach, and I ran into Dr. Dre. And Dre's a guy of few words. He said, "Jimmy, my lawyer wants me to sell sneakers." I just looked at him. I said, "Dre, sneakers. Let's sell speakers." And he said, "Wow, that works." I said, "I got this word, Beats. I don't know what to do with it." I said, "Beats by Dre, headphones and speakers." That was the beginning of Beats.
The third thing that Dr. Dre did that forever changed the music industry was launch Beats by Dre. As we all know, Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre set out to make new headphones on the market, something fresh, something that was fashionable for the youth to wear and listen. The first product was launched in 2008, and ever since then, it's been going up and up, and Dr. Dre has dominated that headphone market. As we know, before Jimmy and Dre launched Beats, headphones weren't really a fashion statement. Not a lot of people really had on-ear headphones and was wearing them with them. A lot of people just had the Apple ones that you can put inside your ear or something similar to that. And as we know, as time went on and Beats got bigger, a lot of people started wearing them. A lot of people started using them. And it got a lot of people interested in higher quality sound. Even though I know Beats by Dre isn't the best quality for headphones, it definitely got people more interested in purchasing better quality headphones to hear music better. Then Beats by Dre got so big that Apple in 2014 decided to purchase them for $3 billion. And as we know, Dr. Dre saw a large cut of that money, and it increased his net worth to about $800 million. And this was a game changer for hip-hop artists because this would mean that hip-hop artists can become billionaires. Dr. Dre almost reached it. The largest deal since Dre's deal was 50 Cent's vitamin water deal, so it proved that hip-hop artists and even producers can become billionaires. Beats by Dre kept killing it. In late 2016, it ended up having 25% of the headphone market share. And because Beats by Dre headphones sold a lot more than Sony's or Bose's, it ended up having 46% of the dollar sales, which is nearly half of it, which is insane. And this, of course, motivated other rappers to have their own headphone line. 50 Cent created SMS Audio. Ludacris created his own headphones sold by Luda. DJ Khaled even had his own headphones called We The Best, and it kept going on from there. Multiple artists and producers started having their own headphone line, all because they saw Dr. Dre succeed with it. And of course, none of these other rapper headphone lines or brands really ended up succeeding as much as Dr. Dre's. The craziest thing about all of this, though, is that Dr. Dre is now working at Apple and is a consultant for Apple Music to help push the needle forward for them. He tells them ideas that he has. So that's crazy, from a producer to a gangster rapper to all this other stuff, to be finally working at a big almost $1 trillion company at Apple. And that's it for this episode on how Dr. Dre forever changed the music industry. If you have any other things that Dr. Dre has done that I didn't mention that doesn't involve NWA, please leave them in the comments below. And of course, if you have any suggestions on an artist or a group or a producer that I should do next, definitely leave a comment below with that suggestion, and I'll probably do it next. With that being said, if you want to support this channel further, you can do so at patreon.com/diverse mentality. For just $1 a month or more, you can help support this channel further. A link is in the description below. Like, comment, share, and definitely subscribe. I do videos like this daily on hip-hop news and much more, so definitely subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at QuakeGW. Like us on Facebook, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.